Leaders of the East African Community Bloc gathered in Egypt on Monday night to discuss concerns about the rising insecurity in eastern DRC. The leaders are all in Egypt attending the COP27 summit.
The Prime Minister of the DRC and presidents of Tanzania, Rwanda and Kenya met on the sidelines of the COP27 summit in a meeting led by EAC Chair and Burundi President Evariste Ndayishimiye. On Monday, a DRC fighter jet flew into Rwandan airspace before turning back to Goma. Rwanda dubbed the action a provocation. Kinshasa has consistently accused Kigali of supporting M23 rebels that currently hold a large portion of Rutshuru territory in its North Kivu province. Rwanda has maintained its denial of the allegations. Kenya, Burundi and Uganda have sent military contingents to the eastern DRC to fight multiple armed groups that have destabilized the region for decades. Resolutions from the meeting are yet to be communicated.
The Congolese army has announced the mobilization of youth to fight M23 rebels who are gaining ground in the eastern DRC of the Congo. Now it follows calls by DRC President Félix Tshisekedi for youth militant groups.
DRC Army spokesperson Major General Sylvain Ekenge announced at the weekend that armed forces are already recruiting young people. He added that more than 2,000 recruits have already joined in Goma. M23 rebels have captured new territory in recent weeks. The M23 advances have displaced an estimated 183,000 people in North Kivu alone since October 20th. The fighting in the region has also destabilized relations in Central Africa. Foreign ministers of the DRC and Rwanda agreed on Saturday to boost efforts to de-escalate tensions and resolve the political crisis with the DRC, accusing its smaller neighbor of backing a rebel militia.
Well, for a little bit more on this, we're now joined by the editor of the Kinshasa Times, Aimé Zonveni, who's in the DRC. Thanks so much indeed. Always good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me on the program, Peter.
Now, for the president to, in public, call to enlist young people to what some are describing as a youth militia, this sounds like a desperate measure.
Yes, it might sound like a desperate measure, but also you should understand that the DRC military needs to boost its capacities, and it is in that vein that the president has decided to make a clarion call so that the youth would enlist. But of course, enlisting is only one part of the process, because beyond enlisting, proper training should follow, equipping should follow, and only then, and proper pay on a regular basis should also follow, in order to have an adequate military that stands ready to defend the country. So it is a process, not just that specific event.
All right, so what you're suggesting is that the president is basically saying, we need a bigger army, please come and join.
Yes, he's saying that. But of course, the problem is that even the military that the country already has still is facing some difficulties in terms of logistics, in terms of proper equipment. So enlarging the size of the military is definitely, or should be interpreted as a political move or a political response to what we see on the ground with the M23 gaining ground in the eastern part of the country. But like I said, beyond enlisting, it takes reforming the military and equipping it properly.
So what happens in the interim? Because we're hearing that the M23 rebels are gaining ground. If it's going to take time to train up these young recruits, what does the country do in the meantime?
I think the country will continue to do what it has consistently been doing for many years now, namely outsource the security of the country to either the United Nations or to regional standby force, more specifically the East African Community Force that has started deployment in the country. Understandably, you can't build a military in a twinkling of an eye. It is a process, and at the same time, the country also needs to ensure that its borders are safe and are secure. So, to me, for the foreseeable future, the DRC will have to depend on other military capabilities coming from the region or from the United Nations.
Well, they're basically expelling the United Nations force. Is that then not the best thing to do at this time?
I think we can't really, it would be not right to say that the MONUSCO, which is the peacekeeping mission force, it will not be true to say that it's being expelled. I think what's being done now is a process whereby we will witness a progressive drawdown of the United Nations force in the country until the peacekeepers eventually leave the country. That is not happening in a year's time. It might span maybe over 2 or even 4 years. But in the meantime, regional agreements have been arrived at, allowing drawing down. Other forces from the region will be taking over, and also hopefully the DRC in that time will be building its military.
The East African community leaders met in Egypt to discuss the situation in the DRC. Rwanda is part of the DRC, of the East African community. The DRC is accusing Rwanda of helping the M23 rebels. How is this conversation going to go? And if Rwanda, if it's true that they're supporting M23, if they withdraw that support, is that the end of the problem?
I'm not sure, but I think I have lost you a bit, Peter, but I think I understood the gist of the question. Yeah. I think the DRC has been adamantly clear that Rwanda should not be contributing troops to that standby force that will be deploying, simply because Rwanda, according to the DRC, the DRC side, is part of the problem. So it has been made very much clear that Rwanda should not be participating into the force that will be deployed in the DRC.
Does the country have money and resources to, as you were saying, pay, equip, and train these young soldiers if they sign up?
Difficult to tell, because already the troops that the country has, based on many analyses, on many reports on the ground, are demanding to be properly equipped, are demanding to be properly paid, and also to be properly motivated in order to fight against the rebel forces in the DRC, and more specifically against M23. Now, if the troops that have already enlisted and been part of the military for a long time are demanding such things, come to think of those that are enlisting, I think, well, that being said, the country does not lack resources, but I think the country will have to reorganize itself and maybe reallocate some of the resources that it is presently allocating to other activities to reinforce, train, and equip the military.
We're talking about M23, but they are not the only rebels. Is this an increasing problem with the other rebel activity as well, or is it now the M23 that seem to be the biggest headache?
In fact, Eastern DRC is beset by more than 200 different negative forces, but prominently it is the M23. And why? Because on the DRC side, it is being said that the M23 is being backed by Rwanda, and even the United Nations Secretary General mentioned that different to other negative forces operating in the DRC, the M23 seems to be more organized, better equipped, and therefore it is alleged that it is enjoying the support of neighboring countries. And that's why the government in the DRC is specifically targeting the M23 because it is not just seen as a movement, as a rebel movement, but actually as an aggression in disguise.
All right, so what's likely to happen in your view? You train up these soldiers, you bulk up the army, but for as long as there are regional interests, is this just another chapter of a very long story that will continue to play out?
I think, unfortunately, this is the case because if you really count the number of agreements that have been arrived at in order to restore peace in Eastern DRC, we can go all the way back to the Lusaka Agreement, then the Sun City Agreement in 2002, then the Framework Agreement, which was signed in Addis Ababa, I think, in 2013, all of which aimed at restoring peace in Eastern DRC, and all of which have consistently failed to restore peace in Eastern DRC. So to me, we might again witness another round of a public relation exercise which will not deliver any tangible results on the ground.
All right, Aimé, we'll leave it there for the time being. Let's wait and see what happens with this step, and let's hope that the leadership in Sharm el-Sheikh might come up with a solution in the meantime. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Fingers crossed. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. À bientôt, mon ami. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
All right, so that's Aimé Zonveni, one of our regular contributors, speaking to us from Lubumbashi in the DRC. He's the editor of the Kinshasa Times, giving us an update on this initiative by President Tshisekedi to enlist more young people into the army to try and fight the M23 rebels and other rebels, particularly in the east of the country.